Tom Brady's official retirement means that it's Trask season. We're going to explain that. And it's a mock draft Monday on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Let's go.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to the Locked On Bucs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app that you can find on your Amazon Fire Stick or Roku device. And we thank you for making us your first listen or view of the day. I am James Yarcho, deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com, joined by my esteemed co-host, Mr. David Harrison. You can find all of his work over at Sports Illustrated's BucsGameDay.com. And of course, follow everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, and at DHarrison82.
Thanks again for making Locked On Bucs first listener, your first view of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. And they have a special offer for my listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/locked-on. It's mock draft Monday, and we are going to take a look at one from a Bucs fan, listener, and viewer. James may or may not like what has to unfold here, but we're going to discuss it. We're going to dive into it. We will give everybody what we think of said mock draft. But we do have some news to discuss first and foremost. And of course, it has to do with Tom Brady, the gift that keeps on giving, who finalized his retirement paperwork on Friday. He didn't do it as well as Ali Marpet did. Ali Marpet still has the greatest retirement paperwork submission in the history of retirement paperwork submission. But he did make things official on Friday, James, which actually makes things a little bit harder for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2023. Per Greg Allman of Fox Sports, Tom Brady's official retirement means the Bucs will take on the full $35 million in dead cap space from his old contract because of the void years that were still on it, even though he was a free agent, in this year's salary cap, eliminating their ability to flex some of it. They could have flexed all but $11 million to next year, making his departure a post-June 1st departure. Now that his retirement has been filed officially and it is officially official, the Buccaneers are officially on the hook for $35 official million on their official salary cap for this coming season. James Yarcho, why is Tom Brady such a meanie head?
I don't think he did this with any kind of malicious intent whatsoever. If anything, I think he probably did it just to stop the speculation, right? I mean, ever since he retired, it's been constant. Oh, well, Tom Brady's left the door open. Oh, Tom Brady thinks he can still play. Oh, maybe he's really not done and he's going to unretire for the second time. And that all ended. That all got put to a stop immediately as soon as he filed that paperwork. He obviously enjoyed his time with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He has spoken glowingly about the ownership. And so, yeah, he didn't do this as a haha, screw you guys. If anything, he would have done that to somebody like Bill Belichick. But what it does mean is we're probably looking at Kyle Trask, honestly, as the starting quarterback. Now, I mean, obviously they could get they're going to have to get a free agent quarterback, at least one. Maybe it's Blaine Gabbert returning. Maybe you can get Jacoby Brissett. You can bring in a guy that's going to be under, $10 million a year. You're not going to get a David or a Derek Carr anymore. You're probably not even going to get a Baker Mayfield at this point in time. So you're pretty much rolling with Kyle Trask. The Bucs are still going to get under the salary cap. They still have a lot of people that they need to sign, that they want to sign. It just makes things a little bit harder. You have that much more cap space that you have to clear via restructures, via extensions, however they're going to do it. But, rip the Band-Aid off. Rip the Band-Aid off, get it over with, because that puts you in a great position for 2024. And, there's going to be some great free agents out there then. Could Lamar Jackson be one of them? Maybe. And now you've put yourself in a position where you can make that happen by getting out from under this money all in 1 year. So probably going to be a little bit of a rough season, but we'll see how it unfolds.
So I will tell you the actual reason Tom Brady submitted his retirement paperwork.
I'm all ears.
And it has nothing to do with rumors or speculation, because I did a quick Twitter advanced search while you were talking. And since Tom Brady officially retired, turned in his paperwork, there are still many tweets about Tom Brady unretiring. So that is not going to be a thing, because Tom Brady can still unretire at any moment. So make sure you stay tuned, subscribe, and like the Locked On Bucs podcast for the latest on Tom Brady's unretirement. Not happening. Here is why Tom Brady turned in his paperwork. Because, James, if March 15th came and Tampa Bay Buccaneers still had $35 million of dead cap space on the books, and there was no reason for it, what would everybody be saying about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
That they're waiting for Tom Brady to unretire? I don't know.
That, or they're stupid, right? Because why wouldn't you shift $20+ million in dead cap space to the following season if you had the opportunity to, right? I will tell you why you wouldn't. Because you have plans for next year. And those plans for next year, you need some money. You need more money next year than you need this year. Why? Because you're rolling with your young quarterback, Kyle Trask, in 2023. So if Tom Brady retires, there's no questions to Jason Light at the scouting combine of why haven't you deferred this money yet? Are you going to defer this money yet? Are you going to defer all of it? Or are you going to eat $15 million this year, defer the rest of it, eat $20 million? And no, all those questions are now answered. $35 million. That's what the Buccaneers are eating, because Tom Brady turned in his paperwork. He turned his paperwork because Jason Light and Tampa Bay Buccaneers said, hey, Tom, do us a favor. Turn in your paperwork. That way we just eat the $35 million and we don't have to talk about it anymore. It's over. It's done. We're not stupid. We're not waiting. We're not delaying. We're not waiting for you, hoping that you're going to come back. No, it's just done. It is what it is. And now they can go forward with maybe a Jimmy G and a Kyle Trask, and I don't know, Hendon Hooker in the 4th round, 3rd round, depending on how far he slips because of his injury, right? They can go forward with a 1-year quarterback plan that's fairly cheap. Levante David is probably leaving, unfortunately. Some of these other guys probably not coming back. There might be a move here or there that we'll discuss in future episodes that will help free up a little bit more money. But look, by and large, this isn't a teardown, and it's not a rebuild. What it is a dust settling. We're going to let the dust settle, and we're going to figure out who we have, who we are, and we're going to go into 2024 with a full-blown plan. Here's how we're going to execute it, and we're going to have it maximized. We're going to have maximized our resources, because we will have no dead cap next year off of Tom Brady's contract, and also no dead cap next year off of other void year contracts that we're dealing with. That, to me, is what the Buccaneers are doing here, which is why, yes, it is Kyle Trask season, because no matter who the veteran quarterback they bring in, because you don't do this if you plan on signing Derek Carr. If you plan on signing Derek Carr, you need that money. So you say, hey, Tom, do us a favor. Hold off on that paperwork. Let us do this June 1st deal. Then we'll sign Derek Carr. All of this thing, to me, points to they're not making a splash at quarterback. And that then means that you're going with Kyle Trask. Doesn't mean I think the Buccaneers are hook, line, and sinker. Kyle Trask is the future of the franchise. But I do think this means you're going to get Kyle Trask an opportunity, whether it's by himself, with another rookie, or with a veteran like Jimmy Garoppolo. That's what I think is going to happen. I think you're looking at Jimmy G most likely, Kyle Trask, and then a rookie drafted to compete on the back end. And then next year, let's see what we have. Let's settle the money a little bit. Hopefully we get another record-setting cap increase, and we push back all in on what is probably still going to be a fairly weak NFC South division.
Yeah, I mean, that all makes a lot of sense. Maybe they do think that Kyle Trask is the guy. Maybe we're a little bit harder on him because we don't see him every day, and the limited times that we have seen him haven't been spectacular.
I mean, look, I saw him made a really great throw when we were in Tampa.
Yeah.
It was a sideline throw, went right to Caleb Skinner of BucsGameDay.com on the sideline over every single Buccaneers receiver's head and Dolphins defender.
Or maybe the long-term plan is, we're going to roll Kyle Trask out there. We're going to go get ourselves Caleb Williams in the draft in 2024, which I know a lot of Bucs fans would be real excited about. But, you never know. That's ultimately what it boils down to. Evan Klosky had mentioned it on WTSP Wednesday last week that, every stop along Kyle Trask's journey, he's been a late bloomer. Maybe it's the same here, and all of a sudden he's going to really start to put it together. I'm not going to hold my breath, but it's probably the best play for the Buccaneers to go ahead and just roll him out there. You're going to get the answer to any remaining questions if he's the starter. And If things work out, awesome, cool. Let's keep it going. And if things don't work out, well, next year's quarterback crop is certainly an electric one.
Rolling right along here with Mock Draft Monday on the Locked On Bucs podcast. Coming up here in just a second, Tom Fornelli of CBS Sports drops a first-round mock. We are going to drop our mocking comments on his mock here on the Locked On Bucs podcast. But first, today's episode of Locked On Bucs is sponsored by BetterHelp. When you're at your best, you can do great things, but sometimes life gets you bogged down and you may feel overwhelmed or like you're not showing up in the way that you really want to. Working with a therapist can help you get closer to the best version of you, because when you feel empowered, you're more prepared to take on everything that life throws at you. If you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, flexible, affordable, and entirely online. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Seriously, don't even ask any questions. If it's just not working, you can switch to another person and they will make that happen for you. So if you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can help get you there. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Thanks again for making the Locked On Bucs podcast first listener, first view every single day. James, Tom Fornelli of CBS Sports dropped a mock draft, and we're going to mock the ever-living mock out of it, because with the 19th pick in the first round of the 2023 NFL draft, Tom has the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selecting Anthony Richardson, quarterback out of Florida. What's better than one Project Florida Gator quarterback, but two Project Florida Gator quarterbacks? Tom says, quote, whether Tampa addresses it in free agency or trade, Anthony Richardson makes sense as a long-term play at the quarterback position. Personally, I wish Richardson had spent another year in college developing, but it's hard to pass up the chance to be a first-round pick. The tools are there. The refinement is not. Given time and the right combination of system and coach, Richardson could be a steal, end quote. We had Sean King on the show, former Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback, rookie quarterback that led the Buccaneers to the NFC Championship game. Should have been the Super Bowl, but that's a whole other discussion. He spoke about Richardson, unprovoked, by the way. I asked him about Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and Will Levis. He was like, yeah, those are guys. Anthony Richardson's trash. That's paraphrasing. I'm not quoting. James, we know Sean King doesn't like the pick. I clearly don't like the pick. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Anthony Richardson. It's not about Anthony Richardson. It's about Anthony Richardson at 19. What do you think about the pick?
I am 100% fine with the pick. The way that this draft kind of shook out, I'm totally okay with taking Anthony Richardson. And the reason is because he has the most upside at a position of desperate need on the board. And we just finished talking about how 2023 was going to be Kyle Trask season, right? So if you know Trask isn't the guy, but you're going to roll with him for this season because of cap constraints and other issues, why not take a guy that can turn into Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson or that level of quarterback? Yeah, he does need time to sit. He needs time to develop. He has shortcomings that he has to work on. Guess what? There is no pressure whatsoever on him to immediately come in and be the guy. He has the time to work with whoever the offensive coordinator is that comes in. If it's Dan Pitcher, fantastic. If it's Todd Monken, fantastic. You know, these guys that have experience working with these young quarterbacks, developing them into NFL caliber players, they get to work with Anthony Richardson now and get him ready. And, you know, if the Trask thing works out, fine. If not, now you have your potential franchise quarterback in waiting, sitting there, ready to start in 2024. If he doesn't work out, well, then you're basically back where you were to begin with, and you're going to take another shot at it, as the Bucs have done every single year, because they've never drafted and developed a franchise quarterback. So no harm, no foul, right? I realize the Bucs have a lot of holes to fill. I realize they are going to have a lot of positions that they need to draft. There wasn't a cornerback on the board. There wasn't a tackle on the board. There wasn't really a linebacker on the board that I would have taken over the upside of Anthony Richardson at 19.
Yeah. So here's why you're wrong. Jalen Hurts was not a first round pick.
No.
Lamar Jackson was a first round pick.
He was.
To a team with a very clear bridge quarterback and bridge quarterback scenario with the Baltimore Ravens. Like, look, I'm sure the coach Harbaugh and all the Ravens staff told their players, we're going for a Super Bowl. Got it. Everybody knew Baltimore Ravens were not playing for a Super Bowl that year. And Joe Flacco is not going to be the guy to get them their next Super Bowl title. Lamar Jackson, however, could in some time. So let's draft him. Let's let him develop. There's a clear plan there. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers drafting Anthony Richardson in this scenario would be about as close as you can get to the Green Bay Packers drafting Jordan Love while Aaron Rodgers is still on the team. But like the opposite of it, like the 180 version of that, right? Because the Green Bay Packers spent a first round draft pick on Jordan Love thinking Aaron Rodgers is now your bridge quarterback. Here's the problem. You didn't have a firm bridge quarterback plan. You didn't know what Aaron Rodgers was going to do. And you were apparently beholden to let yourself be held hostage by Aaron Rodgers for multiple seasons, which is insanity. Because here's the deal. If your bridge quarterback doesn't know where their bridge is leading them to, then you've got to make a decision. Like someone's got to make a decision on a plan for the future of the quarterback position. For the Green Bay Packers, they're basically like, Aaron, whatever you want to do, bro, let us know. Once your spirit guide tells you what you're doing, let us know. We're going to continue to draft based off of what we think you might do. It's just insanity and it's lunacy. And honestly, if they knew they were going to be held captive by Aaron Rodgers, they should have drafted as such. And if they give themselves a weapon or a defender in the first round instead of Jordan stinking Love, maybe they beat the Buccaneers in the NFC Championship game and they win a Super Bowl going up against a wounded Kansas City Chiefs offensive line. I'm just saying, I'm happy they didn't do it, but stupid. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now have no plan at quarterback. They have no plan at quarterback, like period. They might have a plan of what they're going to try to do, but at the end of the day, their plan right now, if we're correct on this, is to see what happens, and then we'll go from there. So if you spend a first round pick on let's see what happens, it's not a no-loss situation. You're losing a first round draft pick. If Anthony Richardson isn't your franchise quarterback, you're minus a first round talent to support whoever is your franchise quarterback, whether it's Kyle Trask, Derek Carr, or another guy. So it's not a no harm, no foul. It's a lot of harm and a lot of foul because you're literally minus a first round draft pick. You're trading a first round draft pick for nothing. If Kyle Trask is not your future, and you already know that, and Anthony Richardson is your future, fine, draft him. But draft him with the intent purpose of Anthony Richardson being your starter, which means you need a bridge quarterback. Kyle Trask is not a bridge quarterback. So sign Jimmy Garoppolo. So like I said, if they sign Jimmy Garoppolo and they draft Anthony Richardson, and the plan is for Jimmy G to be the bridge quarterback for 2023, Anthony Richardson for 2024, okay, fine. You have a plan. That's a Lamar Jackson plan. Got it. Understood. But if the plan is, let's draft Anthony, let's bring in Kyle, maybe we'll get into a UDFA, and let's just roll the dice, guys, and see what happens. No, you're running the risk, and honestly, you have a 2 out of 3 chance in that situation of losing a first-round draft pick just the same way that the Green Bay Packers have.
I see your point, and
of course you do because it's correct.
Maybe they do bring in a Garoppolo, maybe they bring in a Brissett to be that bridge guy, but we could spend an entire week going through teams that took first-round picks that didn't pan out. It happens every single draft. So if that one doesn't pan out, it's not the end of the world. It's another first-round pick that doesn't pan out. But
they pan out, or if they don't pan out because you attacked a strategy, that's one thing. But like I said, what bothers me about this is the idea of let's just throw a first-round pick at the quarterback position and let's see who develops and who doesn't develop, and then we'll go from there. You're wasting a first-round pick with no actual strategy.
I like the pick because I like the upside with the knowledge of by time the draft rolls around, Kyle Trask isn't the only quarterback on the roster anymore. They will have somebody else on that roster at the quarterback position. We just don't know
what Tom says.
Some other notable picks in this mock draft. The Indianapolis Colts trade up to the number 1 spot for Ohio State quarterback CJ Stroud. Yikes. Houston stays at 2 and takes quarterback Bryce Young. Carolina trades all the way up to number 3 with the Cardinals for Will Levis. So you go quarterback 1, 2, 3. Anthony Richardson was then the 4th quarterback off the board. Chicago had moved to 4 in the trade with the Colts, and they get Jalen Carter, the defensive lineman. And somehow the Seattle Seahawks end up with the best player in the draft, edge rusher Will Anderson Jr.
Yeah. First of all, CJ Stroud at number 1 is not a yikes.
Full
Okay?
yikes.
You may not agree with it, but
Yikes.
it's not a yikes. That's definitely not as much of a yikes as Anthony Richardson at 19 with no plan. Will Levis at number 3 is the yikes. Speaking of the NFC South messing things up, the Falcons get Tyree Wilson, edge rusher out of Texas Tech. No shade there. And the Saints draft Bijan Robinson, running back out of Texas. And Alvin Kamara starts looking for a new house, I guess.
He can come to Tampa.
Sure. Once he clears his charges.
Yeah, I will maintain that CJ Stroud is a full yikes to any team that drafts him because he's not going to pan out.
No bias whatsoever. We got another mock draft coming up, James. This one is submitted by a listener, viewer, and fan of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're going to break that down for all of you guys here on the Locked On Bucs podcast. That's how you force your co-host into a break.
This episode of Locked On Bucs is brought to you by FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. I'm a props guy. I'm a player props guy. I'm a big fan of the NBA 2x3. It's 2 3-pointers scored in the first 3 minutes of a game. Those are a lot of fun to try to predict. Where I get myself in trouble is I just assume every NBA game is hitting the over. But FanDuel lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with same game parlays, which you all know how much I love those. So don't miss your chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/locked on. That's FanDuel.com/locked on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Wrapping things up here on a mock draft Monday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. And we have a listener submission from Don Pudge on Twitter at Don Pudge. Makes sense. So Don started this thing off by trading out of the first round and getting himself quite the haul from the Las Vegas Raiders. But David, the first pick that he makes is in the second round at pick number 50, where he takes wide receiver out of Houston, Nathaniel Dell. And then in the third round at pick 82, he takes Texas defensive lineman Keandre Coburn.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I think that I'm not going to fully love any mock draft that does not have the Buccaneers addressing offensive line in at least one of the first 2 picks that they make, whether that be day 2 picks because of a trade or whether that be a day 1 pick. That offensive line is just horrid. And Kyle Trask, Anthony Richardson, Jimmy Garoppolo, Tom Brady, unretired. I don't care who it is. You put them behind that offensive line, even with Ryan Jensen coming back as it currently stands, it's just not going to go very well. That said, Nathaniel Dell, I think, I don't know per se that this is where you were going with the mock draft, but probably like an A-B comp, right? I think that's kind of what most Bucs fans would be tuning in here for, which look, it's certainly a skill set that the Buccaneers could use and could add to Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. So I totally get that. So it's just like the Anthony Richardson pick. It's not that I hate Anthony Richardson. It's not that I don't like Nathaniel Dell. I just, with the current state the Buccaneers are in, I feel like there is a different path to go. Now, full disclosure, I don't know who was on the board when these picks were made. So, if there's not a guy qualified there, I'm not going to tell you to reach at pick 50 for, I don't know, like the 75th rated guy who just happens to be an offensive lineman either. But I would say that in their first 2 picks, you need to find an offensive lineman that could potentially at least challenge for a starting job on top of bringing back Aaron Stinney.
Yeah, I do really like the Keandre Coburn pick. I agree with you completely on the offensive line situation. I have mocked Coburn to the Bucs a couple of times. But yeah, I'm with you. Especially the way this team is right now. I don't love trading out of the first round. And I realize, again, you got an absolute haul for that trade. In fact, he traded with the Raiders, and real quick, he got a fourth rounder, a fifth rounder, another fifth rounder, and then a 2024 first and a 2024 third. That's all great, but there's too many issues to pass up on the first 49 picks of the draft. Now, there were some really solid picks in day 3 of his draft. He's got safety Ronnie Hickman out of Ohio State, cornerback Caillou Blue Kelly, who I've talked about out of Stanford, Brian Kelly's son. Here's your offensive tackle in the 5th round, Jalen Duncan out of Maryland. Defensive lineman Broderick Martin out of Western Kentucky in the 5th round. The next 2 picks are also in the 5th round. You got edge rusher Tyler Lacey out of Oklahoma State, tight end Josh Wiley out of the University of Cincinnati, 6th round pick linebacker Aubrey Miller Jr. from Jackson State, and then 3 7th round picks, quarterback Tyson Bagent out of Shepherd. Bagent. So
Senior Bowl participant.
Like pageant, only with a B.
I believe so.
Cornerback Cameron Mitchell out of Northwestern. Shout out Scott Smith and Carmen Vitale. And then the final pick number 253, one away from Mr. Irrelevant, defensive lineman Dante Stills out of West Virginia. David, out of the day 3 picks, who stood out to you from what Don did here?
Oh yeah, I mean, Caillou Blue Kelly is to me is the favorite. I mean, you talked about him, I talked about him. We talked about him during the Senior Bowl live episodes that we also upload into the audio stream as bonuses. So if you're a YouTube viewer of Locked On Bucs only, check out those audio streams as well. A lot of takes there. Had a beautiful play during the Senior Bowl, pick 6. It set the entire stadium on fire. Jalen Duncan, though, I mean, you talk about the tackle. He's a sleeper. Look, I see that PFF, has him rated as the number 146 player. I think he's a day 2 guy, to be quite honest with you. Like tail end of day 2, I think by the end of this whole thing, he'll kind of move up enough draft boards that's where he'll probably end up going. So getting him in the 5th round is a huge steal to me. But again, we'll have to see how everything fully pans out. I wouldn't mind him again in one of those first 2 or 3 picks of any mock draft personally. But I get the rankings kind of put players where they are. And so many picks made in this draft that, as you guys see on YouTube, like couldn't even get them all on the screen because of how many picks got made. Look, I think, again, the trade back thing. Well, here, before I give my talk on the trade, I'll let you give your favorite day 3 pick.
Well, my favorite was also Caillou Blue Kelly, but since you took him first, it was your turn to go first. I have to respect that. But I do really like Josh Wiley out of the University of Cincinnati. There happens to be 2 pretty incredible former University of Cincinnati football players playing or just played in the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that Wiley is going to be Kelsey, but he could provide a weapon. We don't really know kind of the status of the tight end position for the Bucs. Cade Otton's there. Kokeeft is there. Could Cameron Brate end up being one of these cap casualties? Is he on his way out the door? But it provides another safety net, another weapon for whoever the quarterback might be. And it's a position where you constantly need depth. So I do like that pick. He definitely has to work on his blocking, unless he's just going to be kind of the Cameron Brate replacement where he pretty much only goes out on routes, so his blocking doesn't really matter.
Yeah. So getting to the trade, I don't mind this trade as much if the Buccaneers hadn't already traded out of the 1st round last year and end up with a 2nd round pick that quite honestly did not contribute as much as even a 2nd round pick would be expected to contribute. So that shades this a little bit. The other thing that shades this too is what is the plan for the future. And in this mock, look, he explained in the tweet that he sent it in and everything else, he explained that the idea behind this is, again, you let everything settle. You see what you have in your current quarterback situation, obviously Kyle Trask. And if it doesn't work out, you now have 2 1st round picks, multiple 3rd round picks next year. And you got a little bit more flexibility if you need to eat some cap on a trade or something, and you can move up potentially for a Caleb Williams. And if it doesn't work out with Kyle Trask, you're probably not moving up all that much. And that 1st round kicker in 2024 from the Raiders kind of helps you in that situation. Plus, the Raiders don't know what they're going to be doing, this time next year. You could have 2 top 10, top 12 picks, depending on what happens in Vegas. So, So that's kind of the mentality behind this. It's not just a throw, a dart throw. Hey, let's just trade a first round pick, The thought process is, again, let the roster settle. Next year, come in with even more capital and more armaments or more ammo to make a big splash in the NFL draft, which I get. You know what I mean? I get that, but I hate seeing an NFL team not have a plan at the quarterback position. There's got to be some sort of intent in what you're doing. And right now, I just feel like right now the Buccaneers are in a holding pattern of let's see what we got. And that could change very, very rapidly. So, that's just kind of an in the moment type of situation. We'll see what they do. Again, if they bring in a Jimmy Garoppolo and he becomes the Joe Flacco, well, then you have a clear kind of path ahead. And even if you're looking at Kyle Trask as, let's see if he can be our Lamar Jackson, then so be it. And you go from there. I'm not saying they have to have it all figured out, just have an intent and a clear path ahead. Here's what we're trying to do, not just let's see what happens.
My frustration with the trade, and it has nothing to do with Don. I know Don had mentioned to us that the computer offered him this trade. But you end up with 12 picks. All 12 of these guys are not making the football team. You have one pick in the top 50. You have 10 picks from 109 until the end of the draft. And to me, it's a missed opportunity. For a lot of the reasons you're saying, the Bucs have to come away with a first round pick in this one. And if they trade back, that's fine. Don't trade out of the first round. You still need a first round pick in this draft. And ultimately, this is kind of my issue with mock draft simulators in general. My buddy sent me a picture this morning that was posted in one of the fan groups of his team, where the Buccaneers in this mock simulator traded pick number 19 to the Tennessee Titans for Ryan Tannehill and a second round pick. And I'm like, that's completely absurd. That would never, ever happen. Ryan Tannehill is worth a late fifth rounder at best. You're not getting the 19th pick in the NFL draft for Tannehill and a second. It's just not happening. So I get that it's fun to play with, but that's why I always kind of resort to, if I'm doing a mock draft, I'm not doing trades because they are so hard to predict. And the ones that you're generally offered on these simulators are just beyond unrealistic. So overall, again, I thought Don ended up with a decent haul, addressed quite a few needs, but waiting until pick 50 for the first pick with all the Bucs issues, I was not a fan of. But
again, I mean, but it's hard right now, right? And this is what makes mock drafting hard right now with a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because you don't have that clear vision for the future. And we'll have that clear vision by, March 20th, 25th. I mean, what they do early in the free agent period will tell you exactly what the Buccaneers plan on doing this year. If it's a bridge quarterback year, if it's complete rebuild, if it's a reload, and they go after Derek Carr, like they'll tell you what they're planning on doing by their actions. So come draft time, we'll have a better idea. But look, until then, like that's what these mock drafts are for. Right? You present an opportunity, you present a scenario. It tastes like cherry cough syrup. Like I don't like the trade back just because of what it leaves the Buccaneers. So to me, I don't like the theory, but I'm glad that the theory was brought up.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we're going to start to get a clearer picture even before free agency starts based on how they maneuver the cap situation. So plenty more to talk about. And please continue to send in those mock drafts because we do have fun going through them and playing the would I have done this kind of scenarios. So please continue to do so. You can send those to lockedonbuckspodcast@gmail.com or send them in on Twitter. The DMs for Locked On Bucs are open, so you can send them in there. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view every day. For your second listen, please make sure you are checking out Locked On NFL, the local experts on the biggest stories in the National Football League. And now that the Super Bowl is over, those stories are going to continue to ramp up as long as Aaron Rodgers found his way out of a dark, dark room. Of course, make sure you are checking out everything that David is doing over at BucsGameDay.com. Check out my work over at BucsNation.com. And of course, follow everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at Yarcho_Bucs, and at dharrison82. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. And we thank you so much for joining us right here at Locked On Bucs.